Hello and welcome to our program. I'm your host, Sean Davido, and today I'm joined by Byron Gumz with YVCOG. Thank you for joining me today, Byron.
Good morning.
Now, we're talking about the Housing Action Plan. You guys just recently wrapped up a survey that you did for the Housing Action Plan, and you're working with several communities on their Housing Action Plans. Can you talk about that, just the overall, the plan that you're working on and the communities and what you're doing?
Certainly. So YVCOG is short for the Yakima Valley Conference of Governments, and we are somewhat of a regional government where we provide a lot of services to the different communities throughout the Yakima Valley. And one of those services is planning. And in this specific regard, what we're doing is working with 6 different communities, which Toppenish is one of. We're also working with Grandview. We are working with Tieton. We are working with Wapato, Union Gap, and Zilla. And the program that we're working on, or what we're creating, is a housing action plan for these cities. And what a housing action plan is intended to do is provide a course of action for these communities in order to provide additional housing. So everybody knows that housing is becoming more expensive and short supply. So the intent is to find ways to streamline housing projects, identifying areas within the zoning ordinance, the subdivision ordinance, that will allow housing to be built that meets the needs for those communities. And the first step of doing so was to create a housing needs assessment, where we look at a lot of the census data, where we're examining population trends, we're examining area median income, we are looking at number of people per house, all sorts of things in order to see what sort of housing is needed and what sort of housing is needed for different income levels in each of these communities. And the survey that you mentioned was a big part of that, because we are wanting to get feedback from those communities and the people that live in those communities as what they would like to see and what they see the needs for the community are.
Now, I know one of the buzzwords that you had given out was missing middle housing and some of the different types of housing. And that's what the survey focused on, was what types of those housing. Can you explain some of the housing options that you might be looking at for some of these communities?
Of course. So housing, the missing middle is more of a reference to housing density, and housing density is typically housing units per acre, right? So on one end of the spectrum, you will have single family homes. On the other side of the spectrum, you'll have multifamily apartment complexes and things like that. And over the last few decades, a lot of the housing development that's been seen is on both ends of the spectrum, but the middle part is the duplexes, the triplex, the townhomes, things such as cottage style developments, where it's kind of like a condo ownership, where you have a piece of land that'll have a number of smaller cottages on it. And what the intent of that is to provide sort of housing where people that may be entering the housing market can find something that's more affordable and suit their needs, or people that may have been near to retirement age and are looking to downsize. They may be empty nesters, they may have moved for work or for retirement purposes, and they don't need a 3-bedroom home with a large piece of land. They want something smaller that's a little bit more manageable and still have the ability to access the amenities that they're looking for, such as, healthcare and recreation and so forth. So that the missing middle is something that historically has not been adequately provided in a lot of our communities. So there's a large list of types of housing that fit that mold of missing middle. And in our surveys, we reached out to community members to see what they felt would be the most appropriate missing middle to fill that need in their community, because every city is going to be different, and every community is going to want to see their city grow in a different way. So we want to be sensitive to that when we are developing our courses of action and coming up with potential solutions and recommendations when the housing action plan is being written and created.
And some of the goal of that is to help, like you mentioned, retirees to be able to stay in the communities that they love and to be able to live in these communities and have affordable housing for them and for other affordable housing options for other groups of people, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we're hoping that, because a lot of housing is looking at mobility as well, right? So, for example, say you have a large home that you want to downsize from, and you don't have anything that meets your needs in that community. So you're sitting in a large home with most of the rooms vacant, whereas there may be a family that has 2, 3, 4 children that are looking for a home, but they can't find anything that meets their needs. And they're stuck in something where there's overcrowding, where there's more than one person per room, and those sorts of things. So this missing middle will really allow people to move between housing types and meet that need.
Now, let's talk also about what the next steps are. You finished the survey that wrapped up beginning of April. So what are the next steps? You'll take that data and analyze it and report back to the cities about what the community is looking at, correct?
Yes. So the housing needs assessment has been pretty much completed. We are waiting on a couple of maps to look at land capacity analysis, which is essentially looking at, is there enough land to provide the housing that's needed as identified in this housing needs assessment. And we're taking that housing needs assessment and the survey data and bringing that back in front of the various city councils just to give them an update on where we are in the progress for the housing action plan, and give them an idea of what the community is wanting and what they're looking at. And you mentioned that we had the survey for this missing middle, but we've also reached out to the home builders. We've also reached out to the Realtors Association. So we're posing different questions to those different organizations. So, for example, when we spoke to the home builders, we were asking questions like, what sort of roadblocks do you encounter when you were looking to develop housing? Is it unnecessary processes created in the zoning ordinance? Is it more difficult to subdivide lands? Are the lot sizes adequate for what the type of housing is being catered to? And once we get all this information, we start to look at the comprehensive plans, which are the overarching planning document, which provides a vision for the community. And that comprehensive plan then creates goals and policies that turn into the different ordinances for zoning and subdivision. So it's the ordinances are implementing what the comprehensive plan says. So we're going through and auditing the comprehensive plan. We're auditing the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance. And the housing action plan will look at what the goals of the community are, what various paths to creating housing may exist for each of these communities. And we're going to be drafting that and bringing it in front of city council to get their feedback on the draft and find out what they feel is most appropriate as far as what avenues we'll be looking for to create housing. So, for example, one of the options may be reducing the minimum lot size for different zoning districts. But if council feels that that may not be appropriate for each of their cities, then we would focus our efforts elsewhere and see what other paths we may be able to take to create housing. So we're going to have a draft, bring that in front of councils, get their feedback, make edits, and then we'll be back in front of council early this summer, late this spring, towards May and June, when we'll be looking to get a final draft and hopefully adoption of these housing action plans.
Now, once they are adopted, if they are adopted, what happens then? What's the long-term projection for this?
Housing action plans are guiding documents, so they'll outline a series of actions that can be taken, and those actions may be going into the comprehensive plan and updating those goals and policies to address where that missing middle may not be spoken about within elements of that comprehensive plan. So we would be able to use the housing action plans to go in and update the comprehensive plans. We would have items saying, address the minimum lot size requirements. So we would then go in and change those within the zoning ordinance. If there's a certain process that's been identified where a lot of developers may request reductions to a property line setback, well, instead of having them request reductions, which can add processing time, maybe we change what the standards are in the code to make it easier for housing to be developed. So it'll be a list of action items we can take, and we would be going and pursuing those actions.
And the long-term goal is to ultimately provide more housing, affordable housing for our communities, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And housing that meets the needs of those specific communities, because it isn't a one-size-fits-all solution.
Absolutely. Is there anything else? We've talked about a lot. Is there anything else we need to touch on for this part of the plan? It's a long-term thing. Our communities will continue to grow. They'll continue to expand. We'll need housing
Yes.
for the foreseeable future until something else comes along, I suppose.
Yeah,
so.
we'll always be growing our cities and making sure it's done in a smart and efficient manner. I can't think of anything off the top of my mind. All of our community outreach has been great. Our responses have been great. I'm excited to be moving forward with this, and hopefully we can turn this around quickly and start seeing housing being created in our cities that helps everybody out.
And if people want more information about this, they could contact you at YVCOG, and I'm guessing they can go to your website
Yes.
to find out information on that.
Free to contact us, free to contact me through phone or email. I'm available and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and we'll have that information on the screen for people to contact you or YVCOG. And I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, Byron. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Enjoy your day.
All right. Thank you very much.